On January 25th, 2026, at 7:45 p.m., a Bombardier Challenger 600 attempted takeoff from Bangor International Airport into a winter storm. Within 45 seconds, controllers radioed, "Aircraft upside down." Estimated 6 people died. The doorbell camera 8 miles away captured the impact. Here's what doesn't add up. The official weather report listed light snow, yet pilots minutes earlier were refusing to fly, saying visibility had collapsed. The aircraft sat on the desing pad for 20 minutes before taxi. This jet has a documented history. Ice contamination has killed before on this exact model. Understanding what happened in those final seconds might prevent the next one. The Bombardier Challenger 650 tail number N10KJ landed at Bangor International Airport at 6:09 p.m. on January 25, 2026, when the aircraft was en route from Houston to Paris, a routine transatlantic refueling stop. 6 people were aboard, 4 passengers and 2 crew, including pilot Jacob Hosmer, 47. Also aboard were Shauna Collins, a Houston event planner, and attorney Tara Arnold. A massive winter storm gripped Maine. Temperature 3 degrees Fahrenheit. Heavy snow and freezing fog reduced visibility to 3/4 of a mile. Yet Bangor's crews were accustomed to winter operations. The airport's website boasts, "A little snow doesn't scare us." Other aircraft continued taking off and landing. Desing operations were active. Everything looked normal. Until it wasn't. The aircraft sat outside for over 90 minutes in active snowfall at near zero temperatures. Ice formation in these conditions is immediate and relentless. IATC audio from liveatc.net reveals what other crews were experiencing. About 30 minutes before the Challenger's departure, an Allegiant pilot made a decisive call. "Our DES fluid has failed, and I don't think the visibility is good enough, so we're going to taxi back to the gate." The controller confirmed visibility had dropped to 3/4 of a mile. Another pilot was even more explicit. "The visibility has dropped, and it's stuck to us like there's nothing there. My guys are trying to make us go. I keep telling them this is stupid." These pilots refused to fly. The Challenger crew accepted clearance. The Challenger taxied to the desing pad and received treatment, remaining there for approximately 20 minutes before taxiing to runway 33. Here's the critical issue. Holdover time charts for Type 4 desing fluid in these conditions show effectiveness lasting only 2 to 9 minutes, with the reduced visibility factored in. 20 minutes at the pad, plus taxi time, plus any hold for traffic, the timeline was pushing limits. It wouldn't have taken long for ice to start building up on the wings, particularly if the plane was refueled with cold jet fuel stored in wing tanks, a factor the NTSB has cited in previous crashes. Tower cleared them for takeoff. Aircraft upside down. We have a passenger aircraft upside down, and 45 seconds after takeoff clearance, that transmission ended 6 lives. A DSB data shows the aircraft reached 151 knots ground speed and climbed to just 50 feet before data was lost. The final ping, approximately mid-runway, off the right side. But for a Challenger 600, rotation speed is around 130 to 140 knots. At 151 knots, the aircraft had accelerated past V1, the point of no return, rotated and lifted off. The wheels left the runway. The aircraft was flying, then catastrophe. Aviation consultant Jeff Guzzetti explained, "The airplane begins to come off the runway, and then because of an asymmetry with the contaminated wings, one wing will tend to roll over and the airplane will roll over on itself, which appears to be what happened here. When ice contaminates one wing more than the other, lift becomes asymmetric. One wing generates more lift. The aircraft rolls uncommanded. At 50 feet with 151 knots of speed, there's no altitude for recovery. No time to analyze, no procedure that saves you." The Challenger rolled inverted and impacted runway 33. The jet came to rest upside down by the landing gear pointing skyward and erupted in flames. First responders arrived within a minute, but the post-crash fire, fueled by a full transatlantic fuel load, made survival impossible. The crash sound was captured on doorbell cameras in Glenburn, Maine, more than 8 miles from the airport. The boom was heard across Greater Bangor. All 6 aboard died. Initial FAA reports indicated 7 deaths and 1 survivor, but local authorities corrected this based on the manifest: 6 souls, 0 survivors. "All traffic is stopped on the field," a controller radioed. The airport closed immediately, but the same storm that may have caused the crash now hampered investigation. "The extreme weather conditions are impacting the investigation," airport officials stated. Like the storm delayed the arrival of NTSB and FAA investigators. The wreckage remained mid-runway for days, encased in snow, ice, and frozen firefighting foam. The remains of those killed stayed trapped in the inverted fuselage as investigators worked to document every detail. The questions cascaded. Was the aircraft properly deiced? Was holdover time exceeded? Why did this crew accept clearance when other crews refused? And most critically, why did this Challenger suffer the exact same fate as others of its type in winter conditions? The data tells us what happened. The question is why. This airplane model has a history of having ice contamination and is very susceptible to wing contamination, according to Jeff Gazzetti. This isn't speculation, it's documented history. Fatal Challenger 600 accidents occurred at Birmingham, the UK, January 2002, and Montrose, Colorado, November 2004, both attributed to wing contamination. The Montrose crash killed NBC executive Richard Ebersol's son and changed the industry. The FAA issued a 2008 directive requiring explicit warnings in the Challenger 600 flight manual. Even small amounts of ice, frost, or slush could cause loss of control during takeoff. This followed 3 incidents in Canada. Additional accidents followed: Moscow, Vnukovo, February 2007, Almaty, Kazakhstan, December 2007, Oslo, Gardermoen, January 2008, all involving Challengers or CRJ derivatives, all wing contamination, all winter conditions. The Challenger's supercritical wing design provides excellent cruise efficiency, but makes it exceptionally sensitive to leading-edge disturbance. Without leading-edge slats, there's no mechanical backup if contamination degrades performance. Evidence supporting wing contamination: 90-minute cold soak in active precipitation at 3 degrees Fahrenheit holdover, times of 2 to 9 minutes in prevailing conditions. Flight profile matching classic contamination: rotation, brief flight, uncommanded roll, inverted impact. Identical to previous Challenger contamination accidents, evidence complicating it, NTSB confirmed the plane received deicing services. Standard procedures were reportedly followed. Other aircraft deiced during the same period departed successfully. If properly deiced, why did this still happen? Deicing isn't permanent. It's a clock that starts ticking. In rapidly deteriorating conditions, that clock runs down fast. There is a time limit on how long de-icing remains effective. In Bangor's conditions, it could last only 20 minutes at best, potentially as little as 2 to 9 minutes. The FAA publishes holdover timetables accounting for fluid type, temperature, and critically precipitation intensity. A 2007 Bombardier CRJ-100 crash at Moscow Vnukovo offers a chilling parallel. The aircraft was deiced about 26 minutes before takeoff. Russian investigators attributed the fatal crash to stall from leading-edge contamination despite deicing. The captain believed deicing would protect for 30 minutes. He was wrong. The Bangor timeline: 20 minutes at the deicing pad, then taxi time, then hold for clearance. During all of this, snow fell and temperatures stayed near zero. Here's the critical issue: holdover tables assume stable precipitation. The Meta reported light snow, a specific precipitation rate. But multiple pilots reported rapidly changing conditions. One stated visibility had dropped and accumulation was occurring faster than expected. When actual conditions exceed the weather observation, the precipitation classification changes. Light snow becomes moderate snow for holdover purposes, drastically reducing protective time. A traveler on another flight described, "When we left, we went to get de-iced, and that failed the first time because the wings didn't pass, so the pilot said they were going to try one more time." Dicing was failing quality checks. Accumulation exceeded expectations. Our evidence supporting holdover time exceedance: 20-plus minute timeline from deicing to throttle up. Rapidly changing conditions more severe than meter indicated. Other aircraft requiring multiple deicing applications. Evidence against professional crews are trained on holdover limitations. Procedures require returning if time is exceeded. Other aircraft deiced around the same time departed successfully. The human factor: knowing your holdover time is expiring while feeling pressure to accept clearance, creates the gap where accidents happen. There's a less discussed phenomenon: cold-soaked fuel causing frost formation after deicing. The plane sat outside for over an hour before attempting takeoff. It wouldn't have taken long for ice to build up on the wings, particularly if refueled with cold jet fuel stored in wing tanks, a factor the NTSB has cited in previous crashes. Here's how it works. Jet fuel at Bangor in winter is stored underground at near ambient temperature, well below freezing. When that extremely cold fuel is pumped into wing tanks, it chills the wing structure from inside. If the aircraft is then deiced, the wing initially appears clean. But as it sits awaiting departure, the cold fuel continues chilling the wing skin. If skin temperature drops below the frost point, moisture from the atmosphere can freeze directly onto the wing. This creates an insidious scenario. The aircraft appears clean after deicing, but develops new contamination the crew doesn't know exists. From the cockpit, looking through falling snow at floodlit wings at night, detecting thin frost is nearly impossible. At Bangor, the sequence would have been aircraft lands with warm wings, sits 30 to 40 minutes in snow, gets refueled with cold fuel, wings become cold from outside, snow, and inside, fuel. Aircraft is deiced, wings appear clean, aircraft taxis and waits 15 to 20 minutes. During this time, cold wing skin drops below freezing and frost forms. Aircraft attempts takeoff with invisible contamination. Evidence supporting this: 90-minute cold soak before departure. Presumed refueling for Atlantic crossing, temperature at minus 16 degrees Celsius, 3 degrees Fahrenheit. Active moisture, freezing fog and snow. Extended timeline between deicing and departure. Evidence complicating it. Standard practice is to dice after refueling to avoid this exact scenario. We don't know the actual sequence. Other aircraft use the same procedures without incident. This theory is speculative, but the NTSB will certainly investigate fuel temperature and sequencing. When I analyze this accident, 3 elements stand out. First, multiple crews explicitly decided conditions were unsafe. The Allegiant pilot who returned to the gate. The pilot who stated his company was pressuring him, but he was refusing because this is stupid. The crew requiring second deicing after failing inspection. These weren't inexperienced pilots being overcautious. These were professionals making conservative calls that conditions had deteriorated beyond acceptable margins. The Challenger crew, facing identical conditions, accepted clearance. Why? We may never know. Perhaps their holdover calculations suggested they were within limits. Perhaps pressure from an already delayed transatlantic flight influenced the decision. But perhaps their wing assessment appeared satisfactory. But they made a different risk assessment than multiple other crews. Second, the physical evidence is devastatingly consistent with every previous Challenger wing contamination accident. Not similar, identical. Successful acceleration, brief flight, uncommanded roll, inverted impact. This isn't mechanical failure, this isn't an engine problem. This is the signature of asymmetric lift from wing contamination. Third, the environmental conditions created a scenario where maintaining a clean wing was exceptionally difficult. Near zero temperatures, active snowfall with decreasing visibility, holdover times potentially as short as single digits, an aircraft exposed for 90 minutes, possible cold fuel effects, multiple variables working against the crew simultaneously. In my assessment, this crash was most likely caused by wing contamination at takeoff. Whether that contamination persisted despite deicing, developed after deicing due to holdover time exceedance, resulted from cold-soaked fuel, or some combination remains to be determined. The NTSB investigation will focus on precise timeline reconstruction, deicing records, holdover time calculations, cockpit voice recorder analysis if recoverable, witness statements from deicing crew, and weather data reconciliation. The preliminary report will be released within 30 days. The final report with probable cause determination typically requires 12 to 24 months. But there's something else bothering me. Something systemic this accident exposes about how private aviation operates at the margins of safety. The decision to accept takeoff clearance was made by experienced professionals under pressure with incomplete information about rapidly changing conditions. Consider the cockpit environment. The crew had completed a multi-hour flight from Houston, already fatiguing. They needed to coordinate refueling, arrange deicing, file an oceanic flight plan, assess weather across the North Atlantic, and manage passenger expectations for a weather-delayed departure. And they needed to make the fundamental go/no-go decision. In an airline, there's a big structure around the deicing decision, said aviation expert John Nance. In a private aircraft, that responsibility rests entirely on the captain. No dispatch reviewing weather independently, no chief pilot backup, no company policies beyond regulatory minimums, no union supporting conservative decisions. Just the captain alone with passengers who are employers or clients waiting in the cabin. But there is pressure. These aren't anonymous passengers. They're high-value customers with Paris meetings and expectations. Every delay costs time and money. You've already been delayed by weather. Do you delay further? Now consider the sensory cues. It's nighttime, snow is falling, you're looking at wings through falling snow with ramp lights creating glare. You were daced 20 to 25 minutes ago. Your holdover calculations based on the meta reporting light snow suggest you're within limits. Barely, but within limits. Visual inspection from the cockpit shows wings illuminated by floods, snow falling, everything looks okay. Do you actually know your wing is contaminated? Or do you suspect you're close to the edge but figure you're probably okay because you can't see contamination? This is where human factors enter. Workload, fatigue, time pressure, normalization of deviance. Others are departing. Trust in procedures, we were deased. Incomplete sensory information, can't see wing surface from cockpit. Confirmation bias, we need to go and I don't see why we can't. The simulator trains contamination scenarios, but it doesn't capture passenger pressure, ambiguity, fatigue, or the fact that returning means professional consequences. This probably wasn't recklessness. It was likely a crew doing their best under pressure, making a decision that seemed reasonable and discovering too late they were wrong. Bombardier has delivered over 1,000 Challenger 600s. The aircraft is designed to be safe, and millions of flight hours have been accumulated safely, but the record speaks. Non-slatted jets like the Challenger have been involved in disproportionate takeoff crashes where ice was a factor. Birmingham 2002, Montrose 2004, Moscow 2007, Almaty 2007, Oslo 2008, all Challengers or CRJ derivatives, all wing contamination, all winter conditions. After Montrose, the FAA published regulations, making clear that even invisible frost could be catastrophic. The agency clarified deicing standards to require removal of all frozen contaminants and mandated tactile and visual inspections. Pilots must physically touch the wing, not just look at it. The 2008 directive required explicit warnings in the Challenger 600 flight manual. Contamination, too small to be seen, can cause catastrophic loss of control. Yet here we are 18 years later, with another Challenger inverted on a runway after winter takeoff. Same aircraft type, same conditions, same outcome. The question, is the aircraft inherently unsafe, or is it safe when operated within limitations? But those limitations are so narrow that even experienced crews with proper procedures can inadvertently exceed them. I'd argue the latter, which is more troubling. An unsafe aircraft gets grounded, an aircraft with razor-thin margins continues operating, and crews keep finding those margins the hard way. The Challenger's supercritical wing provides excellent cruise efficiency, but that performance costs sensitivity to leading-edge disruption. Without slats providing mechanical safety margin, the wing relies entirely on maintaining a clean surface. In summer, this is rarely an issue. In winter, at the margins of holdover time and active precipitation, it's a recurring fatal problem. The question isn't whether the Challenger can be operated safely in winter. Clearly it can. The question is whether the margin for error is sufficient, or whether the combination of short holdover times, limited inspection visibility, operational pressures, and human factors creates persistently dangerous scenarios. 2 decades of accidents suggest the margin may not be sufficient. This accident happened within a system, regulatory, operational, cultural, that creates pressures contributing to outcomes. Private aviation operates under Part 91 regulations. The captain has complete autonomy, which means complete responsibility. When passengers are employers or clients, pressure is direct and personal in ways commercial pilots never experience. But Airport Director Saavedra said, "This is normal for us to deal with weather events. We had crews on site to address the ongoing storm. From the airport's perspective, conditions were within normal parameters. Snow removal was active. Dicing was available. Other aircraft operated successfully," a traveler described. "When we left, we went to get de-iced, and that failed the first time because the wings didn't pass, so the pilot said they were going to try one more time, but the second time he came across and said there was an accident in the airport and the airport is closing. Conditions were severe enough that de-icing operations were failing quality checks, yet operations continued because the system continues unless conditions become unambiguously unsafe." The airlines were already making conservative decisions. Cancellations and delays filled the board, but the system allows individual operators to make their own risk assessments. If the runway is open and you meet regulatory minimums, you can depart. Should the airport have closed earlier? In retrospect, yes. But closures have massive economic consequences and occur only when conditions clearly exceed all operational capability. Should the crew have refused takeoff? Almost certainly. but they worked with the information they had, the pressures they faced, and the judgment they made. Should the FAA have more restrictive Challenger winter regulations? Possibly, but overly restrictive regulations ground fleets unnecessarily. This is the systemic challenge. Aviation safety is built on layers of defense. When all function, accidents are prevented. When multiple fail, environmental conditions, aircraft vulnerability, operational pressure, human decision-making, regulatory gaps, tragedy occurs. Every accident is a chain. The question after this one, which link can we break? 2 decades after Montrose, we have another Challenger inverted. The system needs to change. For pilots, especially those flying contamination-sensitive aircraft, this accident offers critical lessons. Treat weather reports as lagging indicators. The meter reported light snow, pilots reported collapsing visibility and rapid accumulation. When your observations contradict official weather, trust what you're seeing. Weather changes faster than meters update. Holdover times are best-case scenarios that collapse when conditions change. Published tables assume stable precipitation. When visibility drops, when other crews report rapid accumulation, your effective holdover time may be a fraction of the table value. If you calculated 20 minutes based on light snow but conditions are actually moderate snow, you may have 5 minutes. Tactile inspection is mandatory. The FAA directive is explicit. Contamination too small to be seen can cause catastrophic loss of control. You must physically touch the wing leading edge. If you're unwilling to inspect the wing because it's cold or inconvenient, you're unwilling to do what's required to survive takeoff. Resist operational pressure. When crews with company backing tell their companies, "My guys are trying to make us go," I keep telling them this is stupid. That's correct authority exercise. Private crews face equal or greater pressure with less organizational support. You must be willing to delay, or return for desing or scrub entirely. Your passengers may be disappointed, your employer may be frustrated, but you'll be alive. Cold-soaked wings are insidious. If your aircraft sat in sub-freezing conditions and you're refueling with cold fuel, wing surface temperature may drop below freezing after dicing. Frost can form on a wing that appeared clean minutes earlier. Be especially vigilant in this scenario. Learn from other crews' real-time decisions. When other pilots return for additional desing, when crews refuse to fly, when desing fails quality checks, these aren't signs of overcaution. These are signs conditions are at or beyond safe limits. The critical lesson: in marginal winter conditions, flying a contamination-sensitive aircraft with rapidly changing weather and short holdover times, the conservative choice is always correct. You can delay and depart safely later. You cannot recover from an uncommanded roll at 50 feet. If you rotate with contaminated wings, you will die. The only question is whether you recognize contamination before rotation or discover it after, when it's too late. When in doubt, don't go. Shauna Collins, Jacob Hosmer, and Tara Arnold died in the crash. 3 other victims have not been publicly identified as authorities work to notify families they were heading to Paris for business, celebration, or reasons we'll never know. 6 human beings with families, friends, hopes, and futures entrusted their lives to an aircraft, crew, and system designed to protect them. That system failed them. The wreckage remained on the tarmac for days, encased in snow and ice. The remains of those killed stayed trapped within the inverted fuselage as investigators documented every detail. For families waiting, perhaps in Paris, perhaps in Houston, the notification their loved one would not arrive divided life into before and after. We owe these families thoroughness. We owe them truth. We owe them commitment that lessons will be learned so future flights might have different outcomes. The investigation continues. The preliminary report will be available within 30 days. The final report with probable cause determination will require 12 to 24 months. I'll continue following this investigation and providing updates as information becomes available. This story continues through the investigation, through implementation of any safety recommendations, through changes that may come. If you're a pilot, I follow the NTSB's investigation. Read the preliminary report, read the final report, understand what happened and why. Let this accident inform your decision-making when you face similar conditions. Let these 6 deaths mean something by preventing future deaths. Every accident teaches us something if we're willing to listen. The Bangor accident teaches us that 2 decades of warnings haven't fully solved the Challenger's winter vulnerability. It teaches us that operational pressures can overcome explicit procedures. It teaches us the gap between knowing what's safe and doing what's safe remains unbridged. The question is whether we'll listen, whether we'll change, Whether the next crew facing similar conditions will make a different choice because they remember Bangor. 6 people are dead. We cannot bring them back. But we can honor their memory by ensuring their deaths were not meaningless, by learning, by changing, by making aviation safer. Rest in peace to Shauna Collins, Jacob Hosmer, Tara Arnold, and the 3 others whose names we're still waiting to learn. You deserved better. The least we can do is ensure others don't suffer the same fate.